The War of 1812. March 1814. The war thus far. March sees the arrival of spring, and as a result, March 1814 sees military action return to Canada while fighting continues in both the Creek War and at sea. On March the 4th occurs the engagement that has gone down in history as the Battle of the Longwoods. Following the Battle of the Thames, which took place in October 1813, the defeated British retreated, while the victorious Americans withdrew, as the enlistment period for most of their troops was about to expire. This resulted in a 200-mile no-man's land stretching from the Detroit River to Burlington Bay, where a guerrilla war was fought out by Americans and Canadians. In late February, an American force of 165 men under Captain Andrew Hunter Holmes was sent into no man's land with the objective of destroying the British base at either Port Talbot or Delaware on the Thames. By March the 2nd, they are 15 miles from Delaware, but the British know of their presence, and on the morning of the 4th, they skirmish with Canadian Rangers under the command of William Caldwell. To dispatch the Americans, an Allied force of 240 men is dispatched, consisting of British regulars from the 1st Royal Scots and the 89th Regiment, plus Caldwell's Rangers, Kent Militia, and native warriors, all under the command of Captain James Basden of the 89th. Unfortunately for Basden and his men, Holmes had constructed a defensive abatis, or abattis, take your pick. An abatis, which Wikipedia defines as, quote, defenses made of felled trees and branches, end of quote. Sort of the War of 1812 version of barbed wire. Holmes had constructed this defensive abattis atop a hill overlooking a bridge over the nearby 12-mile creek. This location, along the Longwoods Road, between the present-day towns of Wardsville and Melbourne, Ontario. Upon his arrival at 5 p.m. on March the 4th, Basden launched an immediate attack on the American position, unaware the enemy was protected by the abattis, while Caldwell's Rangers enjoyed some success in flanking the American position. A direct frontal assault by the men of the 1st and the 89th ends in disaster. Basden is wounded, while Captain David Johnston of the Light Company of the 1st Regiment is killed a mere 10 feet from the American position. The British were forced to withdraw, having suffered 14 killed, 51 wounded, 1 wounded prisoner, and 1 missing in action. American casualties were 4 dead and 5 wounded. No, that's 3 wounded. Read your script, Warren. Still, in a way, the British had succeeded in their objective, as Holmes decides that the Allies were too strong and went back to Detroit. But as the British later abandoned their outpost at Delaware, maybe the Yanks were successful after all. Another inconclusive result in this most inconclusive of wars. An engagement of greater historical significance took place on March the 27th, when the Battle of Horseshoe Bend effectively ended the Creek War between the Americans and the Red Stick Warriors, militant Creek warriors fighting to preserve their traditional way of life. The name Red Sticks derived from their red-painted war clubs. Horseshoe Bend was a fortified creek town which held 1,000 warriors, plus 350 women and children. It was a strong defensive position, and to take it, Major General Andrew Jackson had assembled a force of 3,300 men, consisting of East Tennessee militia, plus regulars from the 39th Infantry and Creek and Cherokee allies. Jackson and his chief lieutenant, John Coffee, followed their usual strategy of encircling the target to prevent any red sticks from escaping. The battle commenced at 10:30 a.m. with a 2-hour barrage by Jackson's artillery, while some of the natives with Coffee swam the Tallapoosa River to steal enemy canoes, thus cutting off any red stick escape, the attackers then using the very same canoes to cross the river and attack the town from the rear, setting it ablaze. Seeing the smoke, Jackson's men stormed the position, and after an intense fight, forced the Red Sticks to retreat, where they were slaughtered by Coffee's men. In the end, the Red Sticks lost over 800 warriors, with some 350 Creek women and children taken prisoner. American losses were also pretty heavy, 49 killed and 154 wounded. Nevertheless, the Battle of Horseshoe Bend effectively ends Red Stick resistance, with the Creeks forced to sue for peace. But the Creek War is not the only thing that comes to an end in March. On the 28th, the USS Essex, Captain David Porter, is captured off Valparaiso, Chile. And yes, you heard that right. Valparaiso, Chile is captured by HMS Phoebe and Cherub under the command of James Hillier. The Essex had single-handedly disrupted the British sailing fleet in the Pacific, and the Royal Navy was determined to neutralize it. On February 8th, the British squadron trapped Essex and its escort, Essex Jr., in Valparaiso Harbor and set up a blockade to prevent their escape, and leading to 6 weeks of insults and attempts by both sides to get the other to violate Chilean neutrality. On March 28th, Porter makes a desperate attempt to break out and outrun the faster British ships, but when a sudden violent squall tears away his ship's main topmast and sweeps a number of his crew into the sea, Porter knows Essex is lost. Porter takes shelter in a small cove, only to have Essex pummeled by his opponent's long-range guns. After 2 hours, Porter is forced to throw in the sponge, which is possibly an unfortunate metaphor in a nautical situation. Unfortunate? Anyways, my bad. The Americans suffer 60 killed, 62 wounded, and 31 missing, some of whom drowned trying to swim to the nearby shore. British casualties: 5 dead, 10 wounded. The remains of the Essex are taken to port for repair, while the Essex Jr. is disarmed and takes the paroled American prisoners back to the States. Finally, on March the 30th, Canada is once again invaded, this time by a force of 4,000 men under the infamous Major General James Wilkinson, who might best be described in such period terms as rascal and scallywag. The American objective is the British position at Lacolle Mills, just north of the New York-Quebec border, site of a previous battle on November the 20th, 1812. So, please see my November 1812 video. On November the 20th, 1812, when the U.S. invaders were driven off by a small force of Canadian militia and Mohawk warriors. This time around, the watermill and blockhouse were defended by another small force, a mere 200 men from the 13th Regiment of Foot, plus Canadian fencibles and voltigeurs, or voltigeurs. I like that pronunciation better, but I know I'm mispronouncing it. Voltigeurs, all under the command of Major Richard B. Hancock. Wilkinson planned to destroy the blockhouse with artillery, but is unable to bring up his heaviest piece, an 18-pounder, when its carriage breaks. The defenders put up a spirited defense, which included a bayonet charge, an assault on the American artillery, the firing of unnerving Congreve rockets, and shelling by Royal Navy gunboats situated at the mouth of the nearby Lacolle River. Wilkinson contemplates a full-out assault on the British position, but decides he doesn't have the necessary strength. And, after 3 hours of fighting, the invaders withdraw. And, on April 11th, Wilkinson joined the long line of unemployed American generals. The Butcher's Bill? According to my primary source, the unpublished The War of 1812, a chronology of the military actions 1812 to 1815 by D.R. Westhouse, British casualties were 10 dead, 46 wounded, and 4 missing in action, while the Americans lost 13 killed, 128 wounded, and 13 missing. Wikipedia gives rather different figures. British/Canadian, 61 dead, 44 wounded, 4 missing, with the Americans losing 254 killed, and again 128 wounded, and 13 missing. Either way, these are substantial figures for a small and largely forgotten engagement. Thus, March 1813 sees war return to Canada, but the end of the Creek War, the end of USS Essex, and the end of James Wilkinson. Still, it's only spring. Bet the war heats up as the days become warmer. If this is your first visit to 1812 channel, my name is Warren, and I'm your host. I'm not a historian, nor am I an expert on the War of 1812. Instead, I'm a student wishing to learn about the conflict. Each month for the roughly 3 years of the war, I will outline the major events and theoretically will also review a book on the war. Did I miss anything? Any errors? I bet there's a few howlers in this one. Then let me know in the comments below. P.S. I'm sorry to be getting behind in my coverage of the war, but I am committed to following events till the end, so please hang in there with me. I have 3 YouTube channels, so time management is an issue. But if I can get more views and subscribers here, I will naturally spend more time here. So please encourage your friends, and even your enemies, to join the 1812 Army. I didn't think my voice was going to make it this long. When the barrage lifts, cheers.